Imagine riding a bus like everyone else to go to school, but before you know it, Train-kun comes crashing into your bus, ending your life in that instant. The only thing Haruto remembered in his final moments was promising the love of his life that he'd stay by her side forever. But when he woke up, he realized that his name was no longer Haruto, it was now Ryo. And God had gifted him with secret abilities that made him overpowered. With all these memories flashing into his mind, Ryo wonders if the fever is causing these hallucinations. But a couple of guys interrupt his thoughts and enter the home with a giant bag, telling him that he smells like an anime convention before kicking him outside. While picking berries, Ryo continues wondering who this Haruto person was, but decides that it doesn't matter because he is Ryo, and his life mission is avenging his mother who was slain in front of him. After he was done eating the berries, Ryo put on his clothes, and a group of women came up to him, calling him a scrawny little ugly bitch, but Celia politely asked him if he saw their friend Flora. However, he told her that he's never seen her before, so Celia activated a magical spell to see if he's telling the truth, but notices an immense amount of pure aura emanating from his body. Seeing that he wasn't lying to her, Celia gave him some silver coins because of his information, and he quickly ran back to share it with his friends. But as soon as he entered the house, an assassin tried stabbing a dagger into his chest. The only thing that saved his life was the coin bag as he fell on the ground, only to see everyone else dead on the floor. As he was about to meet his doom, a woman called him Haruto and taught him how to use the limitless magic inside of him. Using his magical aura, Ryo strengthened his body and pushed back the assassin away with a palm strike. He adopted a karate stance that he learned from Haruto's memories and kicked the assassin in the face after dodging his attacks. When the assassin continued to be aggressive, Ryo twisted his arm and broke it. Enraged from getting defeated by a kid, the assassin approached Ryo yet again, but he got slammed on the ground. As he was about to finish him off, he heard the sound of a girl crying and realized that the item those goons were transporting was Flora. The princess begs him to save her from this mess, but when she saw all the dead bodies in the room, she fell unconscious. There was no other choice for Ryo but to help the poor girl, so he carried her on his back and took her back to the ladies that came looking for her earlier. Flora's sister Christina blamed Ryo for kidnapping her and immediately got aggressive towards him. She didn't even give him a chance to speak, and Vanessa held a knife to his face, ordering him to come to the castle to explain himself. The knights captured the assassin later, and a mysterious person ended his life before he would reveal anything. Inside the castle, Ryo was tied up and started getting tortured by Charles as he beat him into a pulp. He kept trying to force Ryo into confessing that he kidnapped Flora, so his own carelessness would be looked over. But the only crime Ryo had committed was having such an ugly face.
What did he say?
The princess wakes up from her sleep, and her comrades ask her what happened to her. She tells them that Ryo was actually the one who rescued her, and that he should be summoned here at this moment. Ryo is still being beat up to the point where he's about to die from the amount of abuse he's taken. But the soldier continues doing this to restore their reputation for being useless when letting the princess get kidnapped. The princess's aide barges in, asking him what the hell he thinks he's doing to the boy, and informs him that he was the one who saved the princess. They let him down, but his body collapses from all the bones they broke, and Celia rushes to heal him. After falling unconscious, Ryo wakes up to Celia's face, and she apologizes for all the bad things that happened to him when he was just helping the princess. She informs him that the king of the nation wants to meet with him after rescuing his daughter, and he agrees to meet him. Inside the castle, he goes to meet with the king, showing the entire royal family that he went from asking the princess's dad for permission to take her on a date, to telling him that his daughter calls him daddy too. A few days pass inside the kingdom, and Ryo is ready to attend school along with his peers. But his welcome on his first day isn't the warmest and is bullied in the class by a certain brat that mocks the way he talks. As the school day goes on, his peers discover that he can't read yet and continue making fun of him. But Ryo doesn't give up easily, and goes to his teacher's room after school for some private tutoring. You know what private tutoring I'm talking about. After a few hours of study, Ryo solves every single problem presented to him once he learned all the symbols. This is all simple addition after all, and he has all the memories of being a university student. Celia asks him if anything's been bothering him in school over a cup of tea, and he feels sad that he's being picked on already but shrugs it off and pretends that nothing is wrong. A few weeks pass during sword practice, and the instructor tells Ryo to come and spar with him after noticing his interesting form. Ryo demonstrates his unorthodox form and rushes towards the instructor to battle him. His dojo lessons from his grandpa allow him to continue striking while keeping up his defense, but the kid continues making fun of the way he uses his sword. The instructor is impressed with Ryo's prowess and asks him if he has considered becoming a knight for the kingdom, but Ryo is the only one in the class who doesn't want to become a knight. Months pass and Ryo continues learning the language to catch up with everyone else in his class. After a short while, his intelligence surpasses everyone else's in the class, but his memories of his previous life continue flooding him, missing Mai-chan. Because in this world, the only thing he has is people bullying him. Ryo remembers Mai-chan being his childhood love, but being separated from her when his parents divorced. Then Haruto saw her once in high school, but she never came back again to school as though she had erased herself from existence. Ryo's internal conflict grows, strengthening his resolve that Haruto is dead, and that he is Ryo and will live through all of this. The next morning, the exam results are announced, and everyone is surprised to find a homeless orphan scoring a perfect score along with the princess. The brats who don't deserve a name continue bullying him, calling him a cheater because he's too stupid to do as well as a princess. The princess's friend defends him, calling them jealous sore losers, and Celia backs them up by asking him for any evidence of Haruto cheating. They head off after being ashamed in front of everyone, and Celia later tells him how worried she is about the way the kids are bullying him. Ryo asks her if she experienced a similar treatment growing up, but she tells him that she at least had friends when growing up. Ryo tells her that he will also be fine, because he has Celia as a friend after all. Celia blushes like a typical anime girl, telling him that she doesn't mind if she's his friend, but he continues asking her to repeat herself because it's making him break up.
I beg your pardon?
Their relationship strengthens, and Celia promises that she'll always hug Ryo if he's ever crying from all the bullying. Ryo tells her that it'll be perfect for comforting him because she's so small after all.
You're a victim!
Years pass as they spend them together, and before they know it, Ryo is being asked to represent the school in the next sword arts tournament. The unnamed brat's balls haven't dropped yet, and he rejects the idea of Ryo being the person representing the school. The instructor denies their objections, and Celia is impressed by how strong Ryo has become, and notices how much taller he has become now. She tells him that he's gotten so big after 5 years, but he tells her that she's still as small as ever.
Emotional damage!
After drinking a cup of tea, Celia asks Ryo what he plans on doing after graduating, but he tells her that he plans on leaving this country because there's no place for him here. This saddens Celia, especially because he's helped her clean this place up and always cheered her up when things got hard. Ryo apologizes for having to leave, but reminds her that she will soon be getting married, to which Celia rejects the idea of getting married anytime soon. He tells her that she should start thinking about it soon because she might end up growing old, but then tells her that she'll always be small in the important areas so it doesn't matter after all. Celia wonders where Ryo's adventures will take him, and his only wish is to get to the country where his mother used to live before her death. Celia notices him spacing out in sadness and wonders what could have gone on in his life. The tournament day arrives, and the first defender of the academy happens to be Ryo. The brat tells him that no one is expecting anything out of him anyway, but that he should avoid shaming the academy with his sword skills. His opponent appears on the field, and it happens to be no other than the man who tortured him meaninglessly when he was young. The battle commences, and the soldier wonders if he's mocking him. The knight fights all out, using his entire strength because he's been demoted since that incident 5 years ago. But his anger only causes him to rush out and compromise his position in the process, allowing Ryo to knock his sword into the air and finish the match. The soldier becomes a sore loser and tells them that he just wasn't trying and will be more serious. But the referee yells at him to take his loss as an honorable knight instead of a wimp. The night after the tournament, a mysterious man drinks with the soldier, prying him for information. He asks him who that student was, as he was the only one to win a match while his peers all got destroyed. The soldier reveals that Ryo was the one who saved the princess 5 years ago, and this captures the mysterious man's attention. The next day, Celia is excited to congratulate him for how well he battled, but sees Ryo walking towards a woman that confesses her love to him, and wonders how she truly feels about him. During his classes, Celia teaches everyone about using lightning to control magical power, but the brat points out that they're only learning this because Ryo is the only one who can't control any of his magical abilities. For all the crap he talks, he only is able to create a small orb of light, and Celia demonstrates to the class that you must be able to control multiple orbs of light at once to truly master it. Ryo is impressed by her control, and wonders why he's only able to copy others' magic only after seeing it. After class, one of the brats comes up to Rio and tells him to stop seducing women everywhere just because he won by a fluke. Celia stands up for Rio, but the brat tells her that Rio's been flirting with her too. She denies this ever happening, but the brat tells him that his house will not stay silent if he continues playing with girls' emotions. The princess, Flora, sees this and is upset that he's being falsely accused. She blames herself for causing all these problems for him and wonders how she can repay him for rescuing her. A few weeks pass, and the annoying kid introduces the rest of his class to their class operation that they must complete for a high grade. He reveals that he's obtained classified information from upperclassmen, and has his friend make Rio carry all the luggage because he can't cast magic. Rio accepts without objecting, but Flora feels bad for him and asks him if she could help him carrying it. Rio stays a chivalrous man, and Flora feels bad for Rio constantly having to deal with all of this again. Goblins come to attack them, but the students fend them off without any trouble and make fun of Rio for being the only one who didn't do anything yet again. But what they don't know is that Rio is the only one who is able to notice the creepy man watching over them. As they reach the end of the path and think they are finished, they see a giant cliff before the finish line. But before they are able to understand their situation, a group of orcs come and launch their spears at them. Rio parries one of their strikes, but the brat gets slashed in the foot by one of their spears. The brat runs towards one of the students who pushes him off into the princess. Flora falls off the cliff unexpectedly, and Rio dashes towards her with his full speed, diving in and knocking her back onto the cliff to save her life. The orcs continue battling against the students, but they group up together to take care of the enemy in their way with their magical abilities. They eliminate the first horde of them and celebrate, but Rio wonders if he would be able to join them since he didn't take any fall damage using his mysterious magical abilities gifted to him. The students blame the brat for pushing Flora off the cliff, but the brat tries to blame Rio for being the one who pushed him and makes up a scenario to put all the blame on him. The rest of the students believe his story, even as Flora attempts to stand up for him. Rio realizes that even his wishes for graduating from this academy won't come true, and as Flora attempts to clear Rio of any of the blame, a giant beast comes flying above, blocking them from their exit. All of the students group up again and use their magical ability, but the giant monster knocks all of their magical weapons away and dodges any of their attacks. None of the students stand a chance against him, and as they run away to avoid their death, Flora is the only one staying back to heal one of her fallen peers. The beast comes from behind her, ready to finish her off. But Rio comes in to slash the monster in the last second. With his magical ability, he enhances his speed and agility, allowing him to slash towards the monster and dodge all of the attacks coming in his way. The monster jumps to the sky to prepare a strong slash, but Rio dodges it and continues his attack to hold the monster off. Rio parries all of the blows coming his way. The rest of the students come to make sure Flora is okay, but Rio walks away from the situation to avoid any of them finding out he's still alive. The creepy man flies from above, thinking that this is an interesting development and that he's never seen a kid using the secret spirit arts. Later that night, Celia goes to meet with the headmaster, but hears him conversing with the brat's parents. The headmaster understands that Rio likely didn't do anything wrong, but decides to pit all of the blame on Rio to save the royal family's reputation even if it's falsely accusing him. At night, Celia worries that she'll never see Rio again, but he knocks on her door and comes sneaking in. Celia runs towards him, hugging him and telling him how worried she was about him. She tells him about the false charge they've put on him, but Rio understands that no one would acknowledge his truth because he's just a homeless orphan. He thanks Celia for being the only person who was always there for him, and tells her that she was the only person who he wanted to say goodbye to before going to his parents' homeland. Even if they're separated, Rio tells her that he will send her letters under the name of Haruto and gets up to leave. Celia asks him if they'll meet again, and he tells her that he will definitely come back for her. She bids him a safe trip and cries as she patiently waits for all of his letters. During that night, the father of the brat commands a girl called Latifa to find Rio and kill him no matter how far away he may be. Rio dashes through the country at incredible speeds and jumps over any monster standing in his way. After 3 days of long travel, he makes it to the kingdom of Galark where the news of his crime hasn't reached yet. A mysterious girl walks behind him, and he feels that something is off in this town. Inside the town, a chef asks him if he would like to try any of the pasta that was invented by Lyslot, and Rio wonders how Pasta has made it from his world into this one with the same name. Rio pays for a bowl, tasting the dish, wondering if this person is from the same world as Haruto. After asking the person where he could buy more noodles on his trip, the man points him to the guild's headquarters. A maid comes up to him, introducing herself as Lot and taking care of all of his needs throughout the day. Rio sends a letter to Celia, telling her that he won't be able to communicate with her for a while because he will be traveling throughout the woods. As he takes his leave from the city, the blonde girl calls Lot Lyslot, but Lot tells her to keep her true identity a secret. Rio continues running through the forest until he finds a child laying down in the middle. He bends over to make sure she's okay, but she turns towards him and throws a poison fang towards him, nearly knocking him unconscious before he neutralizes the poison. The cat girl rushes towards him at blinding speeds and he barely dodges her strikes while activating his physical enhancements. Her speed multiples as she also enchants her physical ability, and she launches towards him with her dagger, but he continues knocking her off of him and dodging her. He sheaths his sword and uses his superior martial arts to knock her down in her place, holding his knife to her neck, but she starts crying and tells him that she doesn't want to die. The girl begins crying for her mother, and he knocks her unconscious with his spirit arts. After tying her up, he notices that a collar of submission has been placed on her, and wonders if he could dispel it from the magic he's learned. He activates the dispel magic with his hand, and the collar comes breaking off. Inside Latifah's memories, she remembers being on the same bus and dying after the crash. Latifah woke up to the brat bullying her, telling her that she will become his obedient sister and call him her esteemed brother. She refuses, so he shocks her mind and forces her into submission. She wakes up from her evil dream, and Rio tells her that if she wants to live, then she shouldn't try to resist. Rio questions her and asks her who gave her the collar of submission around her neck. Latifah begins crying, finally realizing that the collar has been broken off of her and that she's finally free. Rio comforts her, and Latifah tells him that she's never known the name of her master, but tells him that her brother was called Stuart, and Rio realizes that the brat was the one who sent her after him. Rio asks Latifah if she still intends on killing him, but she tells him that she won't harm him. After releasing her, Rio tells her that she's free to do as she pleases, and that she should head away from him to find shelter in one of the kingdoms. However, as he walks away, Latifah continues following him and asks him if she could accompany him, but Rio warns her that she should be careful from a person that she just tried to kill. Rio tells her that he can't trust her, but Latifah tells him that he can put the collar onto her if he wants because she's more afraid of being alone. Reluctantly, Rio agrees to take her with him, and she finally tells him that her name is Latifah. They set off on their adventure together, and after a while, Rio cooks the noodles for Latifah, who recognizes this as spaghetti. He wonders how she could know the other name for pasta, and she tells him that she used to eat it, or so she thinks. After hearing her, Rio wonders if Latifah is from the same world as Haruto, and when she cries at night begging to go home, Rio hears her saying that she wants to go back to Tokyo, instantly realizing that this girl must be from the same world as Haruto. He comforts her during her sleep, and she wakes up next to him, realizing that he looks like the guy who was with her on the bus. After Rio wakes up, she asks him if she could call him Oni-chan, and Rio is confused, but decides that he will allow it if it will comfort her at least a little. After a few weeks of travel, they manage to make it to the giant tree that Rio was aiming for, but Latifah can't see it. They travel into the forest and spend the night in the wilderness. Latifah's nightmares scare her all night, so Rio uses his spirit arts to make her feel better once more. But after he does that, a group of 3 girls come to their hideout and begin attacking Rio. They discover Latifah sleeping with spirit arts around her and assume that Rio has kidnapped her. Without listening to anything he says, they restrain him and send a flow of electricity that knocks him unconscious in an instant, taking him away as their prisoner. As Rio floated inside the magical dimension, he wondered who the girl laying in front of him might be, but she doesn't know her own identity either. However, she knows about Rio's real identity, saying that his real name is Haruto. He asks her how she knows about his past life, so she reveals that she's connected to him, and that she belongs only to him. Soon enough, she tells him that he'll find out, and hugs him before disappearing. Nee's voice begs him to wake up, but after he does, Latifah runs in and hugs him in tears. An elder of the village comes to apologize for the way they treated him, and all of the girls get on their knees to apologize. After setting him free from the locks, the elder explains that he will be meeting the other elders of the village tomorrow, but leaves so he can rest for the night. The following morning, Rio heads to the center of the World Tree and meets with the 3 leaders of the village. They apologize for the way they mistreated him and wish that he could find a way to accept their apology. His only wish is for them to take care of Latifah, so he asks if he could stay with her for the meantime. And all the villagers agree for him to stay living among them. Before he went on to leave, the Lady Dryas appeared, the spirit of the world tree. After getting closer, she noticed the spirit living inside of him, and wonders if he's been unable to use magic, as spirits tend to suck all of the magic ability out of a human. Rio realizes that he's been constantly unable to use magic because of that, so the Lady Dryas holds his face, and tries investigating the spirit inside of him. She says that he has an incredible amount of bodily fluid inside, and wishes she could taste it, but backs up when she realizes there's a person-shaped spirit sleeping inside of him. They are the rarest types of spirits to exist, and the elders reconsider whether they should begin treating him like a saint, one of the highest titles bestowed onto a human. One of the beast girls shows him back to his place, and Latifah begins showing him how amazing their new house is. One of the girls wonders what rooms he wants them to sleep in, and reveals that the three of them are going to be living with Rio. Ursula comes by and confesses that it was her plan to have them live together. After all, it will help him learn about their village traditions. And for Latifah, she will be able to make close friends who can look over her. Seeing the point in her words, Rio gladly accepts to begin living with them, and wishes for them to live happily with each other. As months passed, Rio began learning the spirit magic of their village, and spent all of his time learning their culture, whether it was through farming with them, mending metal, or even sparring amongst them. The seasons began passing until a year passed with them living together until the Grand Spirit Festival approached. The Lady Dryas appeared to commence the festival, but in the distance, a griffin carried two men deep into a dragon's cave. Rias came back with an egg, telling the new soldier that he will be carrying this egg so Rias can continue piloting the griffin. As they took off, Rias looked in the distance and saw a swarm of wyverns flying behind them. Back inside the village, the Lady Dryas kisses both of them on the head to complete the ceremony. And now that they've become citizens of the village, the elders begin the festivities. As everyone ate, Rio realized why this anime had a harem genre attached to it, and the girls beg him to push the beds together after drinking some apple cider vinegar. One of them tells them that this won't deepen their friendship with Rio, but the girls say that they want something else to deepen inside of them. After all this time, they feel like he's still continuing to distance himself from them, which shocks Rio that they noticed. Once they left to get more food together, Ursula approached Rio, and he wondered if it was time to break the news to Latifah. On the other side of the village, Rias says they will be resting here for the night, and tells his subordinate that he's going to investigate the area. Before leaving, he hands him an artifact, and Rias claims that it will help him determine his location if he gets in trouble. The soldier eats it and Rias goes on to leave, seeing that the wyverns are approaching his subordinate's location. Meanwhile, Rio walks with Latifah to a secluded area, and she begs him to head back so they could play together. But Rio asks her if she enjoys living here. She tells him that she loves it, and is glad that she's been able to make all these close friends over time, which makes Rio happy to hear. However, he reveals that he will soon be leaving the village. He'd been heading towards the east this entire time, and can't take her along with him anymore, so she runs away crying. Lady Dryas warns the villagers about the looming presence of all the wyverns, and sends an army of the beast women to find the reasoning behind their gathering. At the same time, Rias has infiltrated the deeper part of the wyvern cave, and found all the eggs that were hidden elsewhere, so he begins storing them in his void box. The beast women continue searching the forest until they located the griffin. As they approached the man, he held a knife to them and began flying away. Their leader attempts to shoot him down with her lightning, and they notice that he's heading towards the world tree. But before they can do anything, a giant wyvern appeared from behind, and the man narrowly dodged its attack. The rest of the wyverns have managed to catch up to him, and after Rias had gathered all of the eggs, he crushes the stone to stop his subordinate's heart, sending him falling off the griffin. Latifah walks back towards the village and the egg falls down in front of her, breaking into pieces. While looking at the baby dragon, the black wyvern appeared before her and screams in agony when it sees how its child had been harmed. It prepares a fire breath attack towards Latifah, but Alma casts her wind tornado to save her from the attack. She summons her beast familiar and tries to take the black wyvern alone, but her hammer strikes have no effect, and she's sent launching back towards the tree. As soon as she recovered, the wyvern annihilated her beast familiars with the fire breath attack, and Latifah tried distracting the dragon to buy Alma a little time. She continued running around, but as the dragon blocked her movement and was ready to step on top of her, Rio launched an icicle to knock the dragon off and carried Latifah out of harm's way. He jumped once more towards the dragon and used his new spirit techniques to crush the black wyvern with his bare hands. The wyvern prepared its ultimate inferno breath, but Rio cast his wind sphere towards the dragon to prevent its movements. However, it had little effect, so Rio went on to cast his Giga Inferno ability into the dragon's mouth and kicked its jaw closed, frying its brain in that instant. After seeing their leader's defeat, the rest of the wyverns retreated. All the girls were shocked that he was able to defeat the black wyvern alone, and Latifah hugs him for saving her. The next morning, she apologizes for the way she reacted, saying she already knew this day would come, but she was scared he wanted to get rid of her. However, Rio comforts her and says he would never want to get rid of his little sister, so he reveals the real reason he's traveling east. Far towards the Yamago region, there was a land where his parents used to live, so he wants to finally make it there. This is the first time Latifah's learned anything about him, so she wants to reveal something about herself as well. Before she was born in this world, she had died before and reincarnated from a place called Japan. Rio believes her, saying that he was the same type of person as her and wishes that he revealed the truth about his situation from the beginning, but was worried that he was holding on to lingering regrets from that time. She wonders if those regrets reappeared, and Rio confesses that he would be lying if they didn't, but he's sworn to become strong in this world to make up for them. She promises that she'll also become stronger for him and will be waiting until the day he returns. A week later, Rio prepares to take off, and the dwarf leader bestows him with a sword and a cloak he created from the black wyvern, giving him the ability to conceal his powers. But even though the cloak looks thin, it has the highest defense stat out of all armors in this world. All of them give him presents, and while Rio has no idea how he's going to carry all of them, the final elder gifts him a space-time cache, a national treasure item, and they thank him for saving their village. With his new space-time cache, Rio stores all of the gifts and promises that he will come running if they ever need help. All the girls wish him safe travels, and Latifah runs to hug him. He prepares to take off and begins flying away, but Latifah begins breaking down in tears. After 2 weeks of lurking in the village, Rio hadn't found any clues about his mother or father, so he decided to meet the villagers. 2 of the girls greeted him while watering the plants, but when Seiyo saw him, she felt water coming out of a different type of can. Uri took him to her grandma's home, and Yuba wondered if he's from a different country with the strange outfit he's wearing. Rio revealed that he's traveled the lands to finally arrive here, and while they prepared dinner, Rio explained that his family used to live here. Their names were Zen and Ayame, and hearing those names shocks the grandma. She tells Ruri and Seiyo to head out so they can talk privately, and asks Rio for more detail. The only thing Rio knew about his parents were that his father passed away before he could meet him, and his mother was murdered by the time he turned 5. It's been his life goal to reach this place after his mother made that promise, and all he had wanted was to make a grave for them in their homeland. After noticing his resemblance to them, Yuba uncovered that she was his father's mother. She thanks him for coming, but says they'd already made graves for them, so she takes him to their burial sites. Rio gets on his knees, letting his parents know that he finally made it here. As he paid his respects, his grandma explained that both of them had to escape from the country secretly, but she cannot be the one to expose the truth about them. However, if he's willing to stay here with her, he may be able to learn more about them. Her only relative now is Ruri, which happens to be Rio's cousin, and in Alabama, you know what that means. She walks off and tells him to enjoy his peace here. The following morning, Rio wakes up early to start helping out, but the Alabama plot development begins sooner than expected. While cooking, Rio used his hands to make Ruri's floodgates burst open, and Seiyo walked in on them with her brother, Shin. He realizes he's going to have to compete for his sister now, but ends up devouring Rio's meat. After he finished devouring Rio's sour cream, the grandma asked him to take Rio out as a hunter, so he challenges him to race to the field. As soon as he left, Ruri knew she was about to have a Wild West showdown for her cousin, and they would compete over who can get penetrated with his pistol's shots.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Inside the forest, Rio shot a rare bird down with his first arrow, and Shin realizes he's going to have fierce competition. But the generations of incest have slowly rotted their brains, and they began hunting with their bows backwards. Shin wonders why he didn't make a single shot, so he walks away in anger. With all the dirt that's accumulated over his body, Rio decides to build a bathhouse right next to their home using his spirit arts, but the girls begin peeking on him. As weeks passed, Rio slowly became a typical resident of the village, and the day of harvest finally arrived. A bunch of men began screaming for help, and on the other side of the village, 3 menacing men thought Ruri and Seiyo had grown into beautiful women. Shin prepared to punch him, but Rory reminded him that it could start a war since Gon is the son of their neighboring village's president. She asks Gon why he's in their village, so he says that he wants to stay at Rory's place at night since he might be her husband one day. Shin screamed at him to leave already and lunged forward to punch him, but Gon blocked his strike and choked him with a single hand. Yuba appeared and told him to let go of Shin. She apologized on behalf of him and allowed Gon to stay inside a guest hut as long as he doesn't leave it. While walking away, Gon noticed Rio and thought he was ugly, so he tried to trip him.
He needs some milk!
Yuba told everyone to stay on guard for the night, but since Shin lives alone with Seiyo, he begged Yuba to take her in for the night, and she agreed. Before they went to sleep, Rio asked them to put a protective amulet in the corner of their room for the night. Inside Gon's hut, his lackeys were impressed at how well he destroyed his own cart, and Gon tells them that they're going to enjoy their little visit tomorrow. By sunset the next day, Rio was training his Giga Chad body and told the girls that he could hear their floodgates bursting from a mile away. They wonder why he's been training relentlessly, but Rio thinks it's a little embarrassing while remembering his promise to me. His goal was to one day become strong enough to protect the girl he cared about, but worries that she might be with someone else at this point. Seiyo heard those words, and sadness grew inside of her heart. At night, a man entered Seiyo and Rory's room, but the amulet activated. He began shutting Rory's mouth, and when Seiyo was about to scream for help, Gon threatened to harm her friend. However, his lackeys were beat up, and he saw Gon on top of Rory, reminding him of the way his mother was murdered. Rio's anger grew, and while Gon ran towards him, Rio flipped him over with a single stroke, launching him outside. He steps on his neck and begins punching him in the face repeatedly. The girls beg him to stop, and the other men of the village come to stop him before he ends Gon's life. Yubas realized Gon was about to assault the girls, and Rio walks off like an alpha. This is the second time he's wanted to end someone, and this swelling revenge had been burning inside of him this whole time. But without him noticing, he had been pulled towards Haruto's identity. His resolve had weakened, but this drive for revenge makes him feel like he won't be any different from the man who ended his mother. The following morning, Lord Hayate, a messenger from the kingdom, appeared to collect taxes and deliver Gon to prison. Yuba asked him if he could take a letter to an important person inside the kingdom, so Hayate promised to deliver it and took off with Rio. Several days later, the team made it to the capital. After they sent Gon to prison, Rio walked around town with Seiyo, and one of the merchants suggested he buys a gift for his cute girlfriend. Seiyo tried explaining that they weren't dating, but the woman said they looked so cute together, so they should get a souvenir to commemorate their visit. Rio asks her if she would want anything, and the woman tells Seiyo to get on both her knees to thank him. Rio thanks the woman for the smooth layup, and Seiyo sees a cute flower petal that she puts into her hair. He thinks it looks beautiful on her, so he buys them from the lady. And before they left, the merchant told her to fight her hardest for him before a different girl steals him. In the center of the town, a man was trying to develop some anime plot with a girl, and tried running off with her, but Rio used his martial arts to knock him down and save the woman. Her guard ran over to protect her, but Rio ran away when 12 appeared. The girl's father, Goki, heard of the news and told Hayate about it. Hayate wondered if it had anything to do with the letter Yuba had sent for him, and seeing the words inside shocks him. With his hands shaking, he wondered if Hayate has met a man called Rio. While walking back home, the man greeted Rio and asked him for a moment of his time. Inside their house, they revealed that they had known his mother, the former princess of this nation. 20 years ago, their kingdom was at war, and his father was the greatest soldier that ever commanded the allied forces. Seeing his talent, the king entrusted him with the protection of his daughter, and before long, he showed her his legendary Excalibur. But their peace didn't last, and when peace negotiations began, the opposing kingdom requested Rio's father to be executed, and for his mother to be married to their prince. These disgusting circumstances were the reason his parents ran away, and the king couldn't do anything but watch his daughter escape their home. Goki begged Rio to meet the king and queen of this nation, his grandparents from his mother's side. Rio thinks it over and agrees. In the morning, the king and queen are shocked to finally meet their grandchild and think that looks just like his mother. Rio feels that the queen looks just like his mother and is glad that he can finally reinvest in his Alabama bloodline. They ask him about his mother and father, but Rio doesn't have many memories of living with them. He was too young to ever meet his father, but he remembered his mother being the person who never stopped smiling. However, all of that ended when he was 5, because a person named Lucius continued helping them after his father passed away. On that fateful day, his mother had left the house and told him not to open to strangers. But when Lucius came, Rio opened the door since he'd grown up with him. But he slyly smiled and kicked Rio towards the chair. "There are snakes masquerading as humans in this world," the man revealed, and his mother came to see the way he was hurting her son. He grabbed onto her and stabbed her. That was his last memory of her, and he started living in the slums until he was 7. Regardless of what's happened, he will never be able to forgive Lucius. Even if revenge wouldn't bring her back, with his hands, he promises to end the man. His grandfather understands his resolve, but wishes for him to train for a while under Goki. He's the strongest warrior in the entire nation, and hopes that this will prepare him for his fight with Lucius. Inside the manor, both of them prepare to spar against one another, and Rio leaps towards his opponent to strike down. Goki evades in the last moment, and they strike against one another. None of Goki's strikes are able to pierce through his defenses, so he prepares a magical energy attack. This is his secret technique, the first blade air slash, and Rio defends it with his water magic, blinding his opponent to rush forward and end the match. The king is impressed and thinks that training won't be necessary after all, but Rio thanks them for their consideration, and hopes to one day introduce them to his cousin. All of them head back to their village, but when Ruri wondered where Rio went, Seiyo pointed towards his family's grave. In order for Rio to continue living, he can't run away anymore, so he promises to accept what's ugly inside of him to protect those he cares about. As the seasons began changing, Rio understood that he needed to leave the village soon, but didn't know how to break the news to Seiyo. So when spring came, Rio approached her while she was planting rice and corrected her technique, saying he wishes for her to be the one to supervise everyone while he's gone. Those words shock her, and she wonders what he means by leaving, so he tells her that he's going to be leaving the village during the fall. He doesn't know if he'll be back regularly, but he noticed the tears falling from her eyes. Once she was done planting rice that day, she collapsed at home, and Shin saw his sister crying. He asked her if something happened, and wondered if it was Rio who caused her to cry. She told him he didn't do anything wrong, but she's sad because he'll be leaving the village soon. After that, Shin tried to cheer his sister up by bringing her gifts, but all she could think about was how to become stronger so she could accompany Rio on his travels. By day, she would work and stare at him, and at night, she would practice her swordsmanship techniques just to become slightly stronger. Before long, the annual festival was finally here, but while everyone was enjoying their time together, Seiyo asked if she could have a moment of his time. The real reason she called him here was to confess how she felt, and says that she's in love with him. Those words left Rio speechless, and he apologized, saying he can't return her feelings. She asks him if it's because they're not blood related, but he tells her it's mostly because he'll be leaving the village soon. She begs him to take her with him, revealing that she's been working every day for 6 months so that she doesn't drag him down. She's willing to do anything, even reincarnate as his sister, but Rio tells her that even if she did all those things, she's still ugly.
What did he say?
Those words crushed Seiyo and she began crying, but she held his hand and begged him to just stay close to her. However, Rio apologized and walked away. She continued crying, and Rio noticed Shin's presence and apologized for the way he treated his sister. Eventually, the day of his departure arrived, and Rio was ready to set at the break of dawn because of his long trip. Before he left the village, he saw Seiyo waiting for him at the exit. Goki had approached her and asked her if she loved Rio enough to cast away her own village. Seiyo hesitated, but said she would do anything to stay with Rio. So before he left, she wished him to take care of himself, and promised that she's going to work really hard and says that she'll become stronger by the time he comes back. She waves him off, and Mr. Steel Yo's sister nods his head towards Shin and leaves. It was the 999th year of the Holy Era, and Rio had finally made it to the World Tree. Latifah ran to hug him right away, and during dinner, he told them about the family he met and all the things he learned about his background. The elders wondered how long he's going to stay here, and Rio revealed that it'll only be for 4 more minutes of this recap because their village is the most boring part of the series. Never mind, this has become the most plot-filled part of the story. The girls wonder why 02 is laying on top of him, and Latifah wonders how the she's in this anime. But Rio doesn't have any idea himself, so he asks her how she came here. The girl opens her eyes and says she's a spirit, the one who formed a covenant with Haruto. She sits on his bed, but all of her memories appear to have been erased. She has no memory of any of the times they've been together and doesn't even know her own name, but wants him to name her. She tells him that she exists for him, calling him Haruto. The girls wonder why she's been calling him Haruto, and Rio tries to buy some time to come up with some bullshit excuse. He tries telling her to call him Rio, but she begins communicating telepathically with him, and says she knows everything about him, even the number of sperm cells circulating at any given time, because she's going to suck them out. The girls tell him to ask Lady Dryas about her appearance, so Rio tells her to get up, but sees the greatest plot in all of anime. With her magical abilities, she changes her outfit. While gracefully standing, Rio notices the beauty emanating from her, reminiscing about me. He decides to name her Aisha because the image of spring appeared in his head when he looked at her. The girls think her name is beautiful, and Latifa wonders if this would make them sisters. Back at the village council, the Lady Dryas appears and finds it a mystery that Aisha had lost all of her memories, so she asks Aisha what type of elements she's best at. Aisha says she's mastered all of them, especially the sloppy toppy technique, shocking the entire room. To demonstrate her ability, they head outside so they could determine the power of her abilities. Rio throws a rock to begin the match. Immediately, Aisha vanishes towards him, and he narrowly evades. Her kicks match Rio's techniques, and she parallels all of his movements in close combat, so he backs off to build some distance. He leaps towards the sky to try his aerial tactics, but her strength nearly breaks his arm off. As soon as he landed, he casted icicles towards her, but she disappeared and reappeared behind him, casting her own icicles towards him. She continued mirroring all of his techniques, so Rio eventually casted a tornado. However, she casted one spinning in the opposite direction, and the Lady Dryas ended the match before they destroyed the village. They now believe that Aisha truly has mastery over all the elements, but the Lady Dryas says she will begin teaching Aisha how to control her powers. The elders welcome her to their village, and she thanks them. They hold a festival to welcome her, and she begins learning how to control her magic with Rio. After a short while, Dominic shows him the portable house he's built, and Rio is glad that he's finally going to out of this village. Latifa is saddened when hearing those words, and while the other girls walked away, one of them begged him to spend some time with his little sister before leaving, so they decided to do it the same way all siblings do in an anime, inside the f***ing hot tub. Last time this didn't end well. Latifa wonders why Aisha kept calling him Haruto, so Rio reveals that it used to be his name before he reincarnated. She was excited when hearing that, because she used to take the school bus, and he was the person that she wished could be her brother every day. Rio wonders if that meant she was in the bus crash with him, and her silence reveals the truth. But as sad as it may be, she's glad she was right about him being the best brother. He promises that he'll come back to her once he's done, so she asks him if there's anywhere else he needs washing.
What do you mean by that?
The following morning, the elders give him some gifts before departing. One of them is a compass that will always point back to this village, and the other gives him a device that will allow him to change his hair color so he can remain undercover wherever he travels. Before leaving, Rio asked for the others to take care of Latifa while he was gone, and took off. While they flew away, Rio told Aisha that they're headed to see Celia because he hasn't been able to communicate with her. Inside the capital, Celia was staring at the letter Rio left for her, and wishes she could just talk to him once more. But Charles has finally found her, and asks her if she's been preparing for the night when they will finally be united. In the year 1000 of the Holy Era, Rio was finally back inside the town he grew up in, and activated the device so he could change his hair color. Throughout the night, he tried sneaking into the school he used to attend, and went down to the basement so he could enter Celia's study room. All the memories of the last time they saw each other resurfaced, but after he confidently entered the room, he noticed that it was completely empty. Wondering what could have happened to Celia, Rio decided that they should cast an illusion onto a different researcher and ask them what happened. Inside a random professor's room, Aisha appeared from behind and casted a hypnotizing spell onto him. Rio walked in and asked about Celia's location, so the man revealed that she's inside the royal palace. Tomorrow is her wedding ceremony, and the man she will be marrying is Lord Charles, the same man who tormented Rio throughout his childhood. After their kingdom suffered a crushing defeat to the Proxia Empire, the House of Duke Arbor barely managed to commence negotiations of peace, and the head of their house was Charles. The old royal family was forced to flee the capital, and Charles chose to unite his power with the House of Clare. But in order to do so, Celia must be married off to him. After extracting all the information he was looking for, Haruto left and wondered what to do about her political marriage. Their only option would be to infiltrate the castle to meet with Celia just one more time, so Aisha told him she will locate her room. As Rio looked down, he noticed all the security, but managed to sneak around towards her room. Inside, Celia prepared to become someone's property for the rest of her life. She opened her drawer, and her last wish was to see Rio just one more time. But after all these years, she had lost hope in ever seeing him again, and drew the letter towards the flame. The door creaked open, and Rio told her to be quiet, revealing that he had finally came to see her, just as he promised. Without a second thought, she ran towards him and hugged him, feeling like it's not a dream anymore. He told her that he missed her, and she noticed that he's grown taller, but Rio said she's just as flat as ever.
No, that one there was a violation. Personally, I wouldn't have it.
She screamed at him for still being a bitch after all this time, but she's glad to see how strong and gallant he's become. She began preparing tea so they could drink it just like they always used to, but Rio asked her about the marriage, wondering if it's truly something she wanted, especially since the man she's going to marry was Charles, the evil man who tortured Rio. She tries to pretend that she's wished for this marriage, saying that Charles is chivalrous and kind towards women, but Rio knows she's lying. However, she yells at him to marry her instead if he thinks she's lying, and to take her somewhere far away, and to spend the rest of his life with her. Those words shock Rio, but she goes on to say that she was just joking, and begs him to forget what she just said. She tells him not to come to the ceremony because it would be embarrassing, and tells him to leave before the guards arrive. She drags him out of the room, and collapses after she closed the door. Once he left the castle, Celia thought she was glad that he kept his promise, but she knew that she couldn't let him get caught up in this. Above the castle, Rio began wondering how he could discover the true purpose of this marriage, and Asia promised to help him. Rio apologized for always having her help him, but Asia promised that she will always be by his side, and that he can come to her if he ever needs anything. The following morning, Charles greeted Rias after his long travels, saying he wished he could have provided him with a proper welcome. He even offered to let him stay the night at his home, but Rias said he's not the one getting married tonight. As he let those words out, he felt a powerful spirit's presence, and excused himself to investigate it. Celia prepared herself to become someone's doll for the rest of her life, and left her tent for Charles to see. He put his arms around her, telling her not to worry if she's nervous, because his 7 other wives will teach her everything she needs to know. After he left, the first wife, Tennesina, explained that she will make things clear from the start. Regardless of her higher status, she will be nothing but a tool for them, and will obey every single one of their commands. Celia tries to say that she understands, and Tennesina goes on to make fun of her appearance and calls her ugly, but Celia continues trying to hold a smile on her face. The maid runs to inform Celia that Princess Christina has arrived, and Christina notices the awful attitude the other wives were giving her, so she asks to have a private conversation with Celia. After Cinderella's stepsisters left, the 2 girls began drinking tea together. Christina is glad that they've finally met one another again, but apologizes for how incompetent her royal family was. It was all their fault that Celia was forced into this marriage, and feels sorry that she stole her smile away. When she attended the academy, there wasn't a day that Celia didn't smile, but now she's like a bird locked inside a cage. So Christina promises that if there's anything Celia ever wishes for, she will do everything in her power to make it possible. Charles walks around with Alfred, the strongest warrior in the entire nation, but says it's unfortunate for him. Now that Charles has gained the supreme ruler position, he will control the entire military for his marriage, and tells him to know his place. The wedding finally began, and the entire nation was filled with joy as the parade commenced. But there was one person who didn't smile, and it was Celia. Charles held onto her hand, saying he couldn't wait until they deepened their relationship tonight. This was all part of his plan to one day rule the kingdom. While they drove by, Asia noticed that Rio was calm, even when preparing to face an entire nation. But he told her that she was the only thing saving his nerves from collapsing. Celia's carriage finally approached them, and Asia left to talk with Celia using her telepathy. She told Celia to remain calm, and revealed that she's Rio's spirit, and that he's watching her among the crowd. Seeing his face made her smile, but the tears she was fighting finally came out. He was the one person she didn't want seeing this, but Charles panicked and wondered why she began crying. She told him that so many feelings swelled up at once, and that she was overcome with joy about their marriage becoming a reality. As she looked back, Rio had disappeared, and none of her communications reached Asia. She wondered if all of it was just a fantasy. This will be her new life, and she's going to be a doll forever. But as she reached out to hold his hand, Rio came running among the crowd. He began knocking all the guards out of his way, and even though the entire military tried blocking him, he casted his wind magic to blow them all out of his way. The mages prepared their photon bullet abilities, but he managed to dodge every single one of their attacks and flew right over them. The military began panicking and used all of their mana, but Charles tried comforting Celia, saying that they're the strongest officers in the entire nation. He continued spewing shit while Rio clapped every single one of their cheeks and ran forward to deliver a devastating punch to Charles's gut. He had finally been reunited with Celia, so the first thing he did was hold a knife towards her neck. While everyone was frozen in place, he began telepathically communicating with Celia, telling her that this was part of his plan. Charles began struggling, but Rio told him to be quiet before he crushed his spine in front of everyone here. He promised Celia that this is all an act. The only reason he's fighting the entire kingdom is because he wanted to ask her one last time if this marriage was her will. She told him that she's already agreed to this marriage, but Rio asked her once more if this was truly her will. He's realized that she was probably threatened into this marriage and promised that if she wished for it, he would put an end to this wedding right now. She calls him a control freak, but he told her that he's a dominant straight out of 50 Shades of Grey. To him, she means the entire world, and can't stand losing what's important for him because he'd regret it for the rest of his life. He'd already experienced it once before, and knows that he can't ever get back what he's lost. There's still time for her to change, because the future he sees for her will be one filled with misery underneath a selfish imbecile. He asked her once more if this marriage made her happy, and she went on to say that her own feelings may cause problems for everyone else, so she doesn't know if it would still be right. Rio doesn't know the right choice either, but if this wedding was truly the right choice, then she wouldn't have this sad look on her face. He promises once more that he'll make her wish come true as long as she doesn't give up. She asked him what he would do if she didn't want to get married, so Rio revealed that he would take her and run away from this kingdom. It would appear as if he kidnapped her, so her family would never be held responsible, and everything would be at peace. However, she was worried they would catch him, but Rio promised that he would make her wish come true, and said he will become the one who teaches her anatomy tonight. After she heard those words, Celia confessed that she wants him to take her away. Those words were everything Rio wanted to hear, and screamed to the entire nation that he will abduct Charles's bride in order to humiliate him. He hugged tightly onto Celia and leaped into the sky. Her father was worried about her, but she tried smiling to let him know that she would be fine. Charles commanded the troops to run after him, but Alfred came from behind to stop them from breaking formation. However, they didn't listen to his words since he wasn't in charge, and Rio was able to jump over all of them with ease. Alfred told him that he fell right for his trap, and called him an idiot for not predicting that from the beginning. The mages launched photon bullets towards him, but Rio blocked every single one of the attacks with his wind arts. Rios noticed that he was the same person who used Spirit's arts years ago, so he decided to launch a powerful blow towards him, but Rio blocked it with ease. After the dust settled, he began running, and griffins tried tailing him. Charles began screaming at the army, but Alfred said that he will be in charge of the military to make sure the kidnapper doesn't go away. Charles screamed that it was Alfred's fault for letting the man get away, but Alfred asked him if he had any connection with Celia's kidnapper. Charles thought it could be someone who hated him, so Alfred said they've narrowed the suspect down to every citizen in this nation. Charles got clapped and screamed at Alfred to take care of this issue already. Rios wished he could get involved in this interesting turn of events, but with everyone's caution, it would be suspicious if he managed to slip away. Rio continues running over the homes, and warns Celia that he will be running faster to escape the griffins. She thought the vibration from his leg strokes were rough, and told him that he can go faster just for now. After a while of them chasing him, Rio leaped down into an alley and handed Celia off to Asia. He told Celia that he was planning on distracting the army while she escaped with Asia, but promised that he would catch up with them outside of the kingdom. He leaped above the homes, but when the soldiers noticed that Celia was missing, they launched a signal flare for the other soldiers to surround the area. However, this was all part of his plan, and he wanted to draw the attention of the entire army to this area. The mages began firing down towards him once more, but Rio managed to dodge all of their attacks as he leaped from building to building. The soldiers from below tried preventing Celia from escaping, but Rio leaped down and began knocking them out one by one with his legs. The rest of the army appeared, and the griffins continued raining their magical attacks toward him. While he was distracted, 2 soldiers tried fighting him, but Rio took care of them with ease and began holding off their entire army. After he'd eliminated everyone standing in his way, Alfred appeared, and Rio remembered exactly who that man was. He told all of the troops to clear the area before they were harmed, and faced off against Rio. Immediately, he rushed forward, but he barely managed to hold off Rio's attacks. Even with his speed, Alfred wasn't able to land a hit onto him, But Rio noticed that his sword was enchanted with a powerful spell that shook the ground beneath him. His superior martial arts allowed Rio to gain the upper ground, but he continued barely surviving. However, Alfred took a step back and rushed forward, nearly piercing Rio's eyes out with his speed. But Rio spun around to leverage his momentum into his attacks, and striked him with his fist. Alfred was confused why his opponent wasn't using his knives, but promised to put an end to this fight. The only thing that remained where Rio stood was rubble, and Alfred knew that his strike would have burnt him to a crisp. But he had an odd feeling that his strike didn't make contact, so he sent the rest of the soldiers to look for him. Meanwhile, Celia was worried as she waited for Rio, but even Asia hesitated because of the gloomy air. However, Rio appeared, and Celia began running towards him but tripped onto him. Rio said her fall would have had more cushion if she grew in the important areas. Even though he roasted her, she was glad that she was finally going to live dedicated by her own will. But after she let those words out, magical beams began gushing towards the heavens from every part of the world. Asia felt a piece of her returning, and begged Rio to go and help the people waiting there. A group of 3 had landed in this world, and noticed that their cell phones had no service. A giant thug appeared from behind them, and they took them away inside their carriage to sell them off as slaves. Rio made it to the scene and asked one of the merchants if he's seen a similar device somewhere. But after he lied by saying he didn't, Rio heard girls screaming Japanese inside the carriage. They begged him to help them, so Rio neutralized every single one of the men standing in his way and let the girls out. The last one was stuck in a different carriage, so Rio went to break the lock. The one person who turned towards him was the same person he'd made that promise to. It was me, the girl he'd devoted his entire life to meeting. Watch this next video. Till next time, my fellow legendary plot masters.